So, welcome to this crash course in automated ban management. Set it and forget it is the name of the game here. I'm Daniel Cave. I'm head of product marketing at Zyte. I've been in and around the web scraping industry for around 10 years now. With us, we've got Adrián Chaves, a Python developer, maintainer of Scrapy. He's going to do the tech demo for us. And what this is all about really is beating bans smarter. Okay. I want to introduce you to an automation first way of handling website bans and show you some of the tech that enables that approach and how it helps you. Okay. So the idea is we can make you faster, more efficient, and give you more time for scraping and or other tasks. I'll present that, then we'll come on to the tech demo with Adrián. He's going to give you a hands-on code session in an IDE, building an MVP scraper that will demonstrate that that automation first strategy in action. And then we'll open up a Q&A, of course. So again, please do feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. The more you ask, the more we can give back to you. Okay, so today, the main thing I'm going to be suggesting is a different way to doing what you would normally be doing when web scraping is. If you can use a fully automated API and it was as cheap as data center proxies for simple sites, and it can crack the hardest sites too, it would make sense to use that automated API first, not last. And I'll expand upon that a bit, but in order to do that, what I want to do is just have a little bit of a look back at the traditional strategies developers are using today to scrape the web, to collect data, okay? And in that, we'll find some of the problems with it and how we can overcome them. So this first slide is all about the factors that will kill your growth if you're trying to create a highly scaled project. Let's say your boss comes to you and says, I want 100 more e-commerce websites by the end of the quarter. The things that are going to prevent you from doing that well is the time it takes to create a scraping system that handles bans, manually unblocking them website by website. So the time it takes to create that system and multiple systems, the time lost when inevitably they break and you have to go and fix configs and infrastructure, and then a website changes its anti-bot profile in the long term and that causes problems. And let me just move Adrian's little window there. Estimating costs for any given site across multiple tools is really hard. So these are just some of the things that kill your ability to grow and experiment, really. And when we look at where these problems come from in the first place, we need to have a look at the anti-bot evolution, or the evolution of anti-bot systems. In the good old days, when you could use a data center IP, that's what DCIP stands for, data center IP. The anti-bot solutions were fairly simple, and it was fairly cheap to handle those bans. And of course, through time, anti-bot systems got more complex. You started having to use more advanced tools like proxy rotators, residential IPs, maybe scriptable browsers. And then, even more recently, they got incredibly sophisticated, and you have to start using even more tools like scriptable browsers, browser farms, TLS fingerprinting, various libraries. And that means there's a variety of solutions for a variety of ban difficulties, okay? But using the most expensive tool for all sites doesn't make any sense, right? So that's why we end up using multiple tools to tackle all of the different sites we have to collect data from. And so you're combining those tools comes each with their own contract, their own SLAs, their overheads with integration and all of that stuff. And then with each of those tools, you have to find a config that works to solve an opaque ban. So you don't get told why you're getting banned. So you have to do trial and error to try and fix that ban and monitor success rates. You have to build tools to do that. Then, the site changes and it breaks again, and, you're losing data and you get a phone call at 3 a.m. Can you come in and fix this, this particular site that's being blocked? Which ultimately, leads to unhappy customers, unhappy dev team, missing data, all that bad stuff. Okay. And what that kind of looks like, if we were going to visualize that way of developing your anti-ban systems or your ban handling systems, is for easy sites, you would use your DC proxies, you'd build a system for that. And then you would get your next level up of bands, which, you might say, oh, okay, I need to use residential proxies, maybe a headless browser, your Puppeteer, Selenium, that sort of thing, play with some user agents and stuff. Then eventually they get so hard that what the majority of people do is then hand off to a unblocker API to handle the very, very hardest stuff. It's just not economical to build a system to handle those bands. Okay, so you give it off to another system. And to sort of sum that up, to put it simply, if data center doesn't work, you've got two real options. Start experimenting with Puppeteer and other tools, learning, finding libraries, or you can add an expensive unblocker into the mix, which is just adding another tool to the stack, another integration, more maintenance. And as a good friend of mine in the industry, Fabian said, when option one is too much of a heavy lift, I just use unblockers for the harder sites. It's quite simple. So if we look at each of those systems and ways to fight bans, I'm not going to read these out one to one, but even for the easy to solve ban solutions, your time is money. Building multiple systems using multiple vendors as a time sink, days of trial and error. You're incurring maintenance debt with every manual fix you do. And with every piece of tech you add to the system, inevitably it becomes fragile, which is a problem. And you have multiple proxy subscriptions, which causes overage risks. It's hard to plan your time and budgets. And anything that has this manual sort of configuration task baked in is going to kill your productivity if you need to scale fast. Okay. And obviously, that all comes with opportunity cost. And as you go up the tree of solving bans that are harder to solve with more technology, you run into this accelerating, diminishing returns of in-house development. And what that means is you're getting less data for more and more effort you put in, okay? And you're adding more and more maintenance every time. And the reality is there are companies that exist that can do this stuff and have economies of scale. But many of those companies, the problem is they're just sledgehammers, right? They charge the same price for every single site you send to them regardless. So it's just another more powerful tool to add to the top of the stack, which is, not ideal. So what I'm going to suggest is there's a better strategy and why using an automation first approach makes sense. If you can have one API for both easy and hard sites, you can send your requests to. And if it handles both the easy sites and the hard sites, instantly unblocking them for you, and if it uses the minimum tech required to overcome each of those bans, pricing them per domain, then that makes it a lot of sense. You can use one tool that unblocks all the different site types quicker, cheaper, definitely easier. And you can use one API and it's priced to do everything. I'll simplify everything down to the budgeting level even. So obviously, this webinar is put on by Zyte because we have a tool that does this. We have Zyte API, which automatically handles bans, and it has access to all of those various tools we talked about, from the very simple data center IPs through to the most AI-driven techniques available. And it automatically avoids bans for you using the minimum set of technology required. That means we can have per site pricing, so you only use data center IPs for easy to boot sites, and you can use one automated tool without a cost trade-off. So we can turn this system that we saw earlier into something a bit more like this, okay? From day one, rather than building all those systems, you can send all your requests from day one through Zyte API, okay? It'll automatically and instantly unblock all of those sites for you. The easy sites will stay cheap. The harder sites will be solved using the leanest tech possible. And it has the added bonus of being self-healing. It'll monitor itself and it will automatically adapt to any changing circumstance. So I hope you can see why that would be a better approach, assuming that the cheap sites stay cheap and the hard sites are all solved for you instantly and you don't get any demand. There's a pricing model that goes with this. I'm not going to linger on too much, but you can see that simple bans are cheaper to bypass. More complex bans, as you would hope, use more complex technology. So you don't pay for technology you don't need, but it's available there if you need it, and you don't have to manually find the solution yourself. it's all available to see the pricing of. You just need to log in and you can use the budgeting tool. So that handles your budgeting problems because you know what you're going to pay before you ever run a crawl. You don't have to figure out how many gigabytes it's going to cost you or any of that sort of thing. It's just priced per request. So I spoke really fast because I really want to get through to Adrian's section of this webinar, which really shows this approach in action. I hope you can see that it's a good approach, and that this tech demo is going to show you how easy it is to set that approach up, so you can then just forget about these bands and get on with your day. Okay, so Adrian, I'll stop sharing my screen and hand over to you if you want to take over, and I'll put myself on mute too.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so let me move a few things around. Now, I'm going to give a very short demo of how the anti-ban features and browser rendering works with Zyte API. So we are going to be using Scrapy or ScrapePy or Scrappy, however you prefer to call it. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but for those who aren't, ScrapePy is an open source framework which was developed by Zyte and has a very vibrant community with many other contributors. And it's really one of the best web frameworks there is for web scraping. I would say the best. In Python, it's definitely the best you have. And it's really, I mean, there are few contenders in other languages. And yeah. Now, we are not going to start a whole new project from scratch because that would take some time. So instead, what I did is I went to the Zyte docs, and we have a web scraping tutorial, which I encourage you to follow. It's very complete and in seeing what you can do with Zyte API. And since you have a free trial when you sign up for Zyte API, you can follow the tutorial, no problem. And the good thing is that this whole project, this whole tutorial follows the steps to configure a Scrapy project from scratch. But we also provide here a link to a GitHub repository with all of those steps from the tutorial already followed for you. So you can just clone the repository and you have all the code locally. And that's what I did. This is my IDE, if you can call it an IDE. And I have the whole project here. Now, we are going to start with a very simple example that is part of the tutorial, which is this little spider here. This is a very simple Scrapy spider. It has a start URL here. So the spider starts by visiting this URL, which is from a website, a sample website that we have to test scraping that all of you can use. And it simply follows links to all the books in this category, all the 32 books, and extracts some information from them, okay? Now, I added a custom setting to this spider earlier to disable Zyte API transparent mode. Now, this project that I cloned from GitHub is already configured to use Zyte API by default. So it's like a regular scrape project, but all requests go through Zyte API. That allows you to avoid bans in websites that ban your request, that send some bad requests when you access from your IP address using requests or call or anything. You send the request through Zyte API to avoid those bad responses. Now, I disabled that so that this is going to not use Zyte API and instead is going to go through my local network. And we are going to run this example. So scripting, crawl, and the name of the spider. And this is going to be very fast, I believe. Yeah. So in this second, we extracted all the 32 books, and for every book, we extracted some information. You can see the details around here. Anyway, the point is, what do you have to change in a Scrapy spider so that the spider, instead of going through your local network, goes through Zyte API? To do that, you just have to enable Zyte API. We have a plugin for Scrapy that makes the experience very seamless. So if we run the same command again, now with transparent mode set to true, we are barely going to notice any difference. And to notice a difference, you have to look closer. So the crawl in general took a bit longer because my request, instead of going directly to the server, went through the Zyte API servers and then to the upstream server. But we see that we also see a few extra stats about Zyte API, but we also scraped 32 items with the same date. Everything worked as before. Now, why would you use Zyte API with a website like this one, which doesn't have any sort of banning? It's not banning your traffic. In this specific case, this website is never going to ban your traffic. We maintain this website and we assure you that it's not going to ban you. But that's not true for every website. Some websites may not ban you today and may ban you tomorrow. And you don't want to be worried and have to be monitoring for that and have your spider suddenly stop when you least expect it, and you have to spend time figuring out why it stopped and how to fix those issues because of the ban. So you enable Zyte API and everything is going to work. If they start banning requests, you are still going to get the right responses. If they change the technology they use to ban requests, make it harder for you, you still are going to keep getting the right responses, because Zyte API is going to take care of that for you. It's going to monitor the site, it's going to know which technologies need to be used to avoid bans, and it's going to employ them every time. Now we are going to write a new spider now, which we are going to use to access a site that actually bans traffic. So there's an e-commerce website called Currys, which happens to ban access, as we'll see, for some requests. Set cookies, let's find some product page. Let's see. Oh, an air fryer, nice. My brother loves to cook on this.
I recommend that air fryer. I have that one at home, actually.
Nice. So we are going to write a very simple spider that is going to access this URL and try to extract information from this page, okay? We are going to probably just extract the name just to have a nice example. Now, in Scrapy, writing a spider is a matter of creating a Python file in the spiders folder. Let's call it queries.py. And you need to import the spider class. You need to create a subclass of that spider class, which will be your spider for this website. Let me actually make that bigger for you guys. Make sure you can see. Now you need to give the spider some name. And we define the start URL. So in this case, it's going to be a single one. It's going to be the one that we just copied from that webpage. So we have a spider that is going to start visiting this URL. And now we have to define the code that is going to parse the response once we get it. The default method callback for parsing responses in Scrapy is called parse. So we define that method and we yield a dictionary with a name key. And this is going to be the name of the product. So we inspect the HTML, the DOM actually. It uses the product name class, so we are going to use a CSX selector to get that, which would be response.css dot and the name of the class. We want the text inside that element, and we want it as a single string. Now we are going to also actually I can copy it from the other spider. Go faster. We are going to do the same as I did for the other spider, and we are going to first disable Zyte API to see what happens, okay? So now we are going to run the spider, scrape the call and the name of the spider we just created. And what we are going to see here, if we go a bit up, is that we are getting a 403 response. This is a ban response. The server decided that they didn't want to give a proper response to our request and instead said a ban response. The HTTP code that you can get in about response can be of all kinds. Usually they are in the 400, but you could even get a 200 response that is actually a bad response, okay? Zyte API is smart enough to tell apart which responses are bad and which are not. But the point is that when we access this website without using Zyte API, we get a bad response. The idea with Zyte API is that you don't have to worry about this. You don't have to keep thinking how to fix this issue. This is an issue that someone else should solve for you. And it's important because the banning issue is a cat and mouse game where the more time you put, the more time they put. It's very hard to keep track and keep up to date with these things. Inside, we have a dedicated team that is responsible for solving bans, keeping a good success rate and good response times. But doing that on your own for every website you wish to answer is doable at a low scale, but it becomes increasingly hard as you need to access more websites. And usually when you are doing web scraping, what you want is the data. You don't want to waste time with this stuff. You want to focus on getting as much data as possible from as many websites as possible. Now, we are going to now enable Zyte API again and run the spider. Now, because we are using Zyte API, we are going to actually get a good response from the website, 200 here. And we are going to successfully extract the name of the product, which is here, the Ninja Foodie Max Dual Zones, blah, 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 air fryer. That's it. That's all we need to do. We have a spider. It's not working because of bans. We enable Zyte API. It works. And the good thing is that it will work even if the system this website uses for running request changes or it's mess with parameters or whatever. Zyte API knows how to adapt to changing circumstances in websites. But Zyte API is not just for us. We have more. And now I'm going to show you one of those extra features that we have, which is browser rendering. Now, browser rendering is something that some people use to avoid bans, but it's actually something that if you use Zyte API, you don't need for bans, obviously. Zyte API will work that out for you. But there are scenarios where it's still useful to use browser rendering. Most notably, in some websites, figuring out how to reproduce what the website does to get the right data can be a bit hard. Let's actually see an example. So we have one of the spiders in the project here that I share from GitHub uses browser rendering and targets this page. So how would we access data from this page? This is a page where you select an actor, then select a tag, and you get quotes from that author tagged with that tag. What you would usually do with Scrapy or with any other framework is to monitor the network tab of your browser developer tools as you go along and do what you want to do with your code in the page, monitor what actually happens, which requests are sent, with which headers, which cookies. And then you would have to reproduce the relevant request from here in your own code. But what if you didn't have to do that? And on some websites, this can be complicated. I've seen very chaotic websites that do banning in the middle of those steps, that use encryption even within the page, which is a very weird thing to do, but I've seen it in actual websites out there. And the thing is, you don't have to do all of that if you don't want to. And not doing that, using browser rendering instead, can save you developer time, can save you a lot of developer time. And developer time is a very valuable resource usually, so it's worth considering. Now, what we have here in the other side is a spider, a Scrapy spider, that has been modified with additional parameters that are going to be sent to Zyte API to get it to behave a bit differently from a default request. So we have a parameter called browse HTML that we set to true. And this is going to tell Zyte API that we don't want the raw HTTP response from the website. We want the URL that we send to be rendered in a browser. Then we want all JavaScript and such to run. And then we want to get the HTML representation of the actual document object model, the content of the web page in memory, rendered as HTML and sent back to us, including any change that was made through JavaScript and loading external data from other URLs and such. Now, in addition to that, we can pass actions to Zyte API. And through actions, we are telling Zyte API that before rendering that, before giving us the HTML version of the page, we want to run some interactions, to interact with the page, to do things in the page, as if we were a human. So here we have a script, a list of actions. This is very simple JSON, and we have an API docs for details. And we ask to select Albert Einstein. We wait for the page to load the tags. We select the word tag. We wait for the page to, we click on the search button, and we wait for the quotes, the results to load. So if I run this spider here now, sorry, scrapey. And the name of the spider. So this is going to do that. It's going to send a request to Zyte API that is going to do the same things that I did on the web page. It's going to render on a browser and actually do those clicks, those selects. And when it finishes, it's going to extract the author, the tags, and the text from this element here. We are going to get the actual code, which doesn't exist on the raw HTTP response. So if we crawl a bit up here, we can see the result here. Author brainstorm, tag words, text, the words we have created. It is a process of our thinking. So that's about what I wanted to cover. That's all I wanted to show. I do want to mention that we have quite a lot of actions. It's not just selecting and typing. We have all the actions you would expect from any browser rendering tool like Puppeteer or Playwright. If we go to the reference documentation and for actions, we can actually see that we have click, double click, the usual waits, wait processes. And we also have special actions that are designed specifically for certain websites, like using the search box or filling a location form with a zip code and address and such. So we made these actions with knowledge of many target websites, and they work. They work on many of those websites, and you don't have to worry of writing the script that focuses the search box and then types on the search box and then clicks the search button. You don't have to worry about that.
Can we also write our own script if we'd like for the actions?
Yes, for enterprise customers, we have a thing called, we have what we call the Zyte IDE, which is a web IDE based on Visual Code for the web, which allows you to write TypeScript scripts that you can upload to Zyte API and then run with a single action that points to it. Now, for most of the stuff that you would do in browser rendering and with actions, most of it you can do with just the action sequence. But there are special cases where you may want to have a custom script. I'm thinking, for example, cases where you actually need a for loop or an if statement, things like that, that don't fit the sequence way to run actions. To do those things, we have this TypeScript API, which basically gives you access to the same actions, only that you have an actual programming language, very simple and straightforward TypeScript language that you can use to run the same actions with for loops, with if statement, with all of the usual programming stuff.
Cool, thank you.
So back to you, Daniel.
Thanks for that, Adrian. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
I'll share my screen and open up this. Brilliant. So thanks. I really appreciate you taking the time to run us through this. It's always good to get an actual code editor up and see it happening in real time and sort of proving it works rather than just saying it does. And yes, I can recommend that air fryer. That specific model, it's excellent. Anyway, so I hope you could see from that demo, guys, that we created a spider in minutes. We can download the existing project. The spider got blocked. We set Zyte API as the website unblocker, and it just instantly beat the bans. What you didn't see in the background was the pricing, but it does it cost efficiently. And we created little to no maintenance there. So it just took care of everything. It took care of the ban maintenance. And actually, because the automations are abstracted, we maintain that for you too. So you don't need to go back and rewrite your interaction scripts. I believe I didn't see if we did it, but we can easily turn on browser rendering. So if we want the browser to be rendered and performing the browser actions. So yes, I hope you can see how all of that leads to this situation where we removed the time and the cost of building your own system that doesn't get blocked per website. We've removed all of the ban maintenance from that traditional way of doing it. And because of the pricing model, you can go and look up and it's easy to plan. Okay. So don't take our word for any of this, though. Please do go and check out the Proxyway report on unblocker APIs, where we've done extremely well against all the various tests they put us up against. Check out Pierre Luigi's the Web Scraping Club, fantastic author and writer and presenter. He has a Discord too. You can join, but he reviewed us 100 out of 100 on his test reviews. And I'm just going to wrap this up by sort of trying to put a little bow on all of this for you. At the start, I talked about an automation-first approach that could boost your productivity and scalability with tech. It allows you to delegate and automate all of this stuff to an API rather than building large infrastructures and tech stacks to do it for you. Okay, so we believe that that this system really shortcuts the current way of doing things. It could do both types of sites, hard and easy, quicker, cheaper, with less work, less admin, less risk of overages, and virtually no outages because it's going to heal itself. So I hope you agree that this is an exciting way and a better way to do things. And you can go ahead and grab a free trial at any time. We'll give you $5 credit on every free trial. And I think some of the cheapest requests are something like 2/1000th of a cent. So that trial will go a long way. And if you want to, join us on the Discord, of course. I said earlier, it's got myself, Adrian, our developer advocates, the founder of Scrapey, legal teams, and all that good stuff on there. So please do join us for there. We're going to have a Q&A next. But just before the Q&A, one of the people asked about selectors and automating those. Well, funnily enough, I think the next webinar I'm going to do is going to be all about that. If only there's a way I could do this same automation approach to get rid of having to write selectors. I wonder if Zyte can do that. Well, the answer is yes. We use machine learning. It's a very exciting new product we have. And I'm going to be presenting that to you, if not later this month, then early in January. Hope to see you there for that. But yeah, shall we jump into some Q&A? I see we've got some questions. I'll open those up. I'll stop sharing my screen so we can have ourselves on that.
Okay, so go ahead.
First question from... I'm just going to read the questions rather than saying people's names. For GDPR reasons, why not? Do you have some example where Zyte API cannot be enough? Some website with better anti-block system like Cloudflare, Capture, etc.
The answer is hard. Like, if you look at the recent blog post of several people, as I think Daniel actually showed examples, in most websites, we are basically the best solution there at the moment. It's very difficult. It's very rare for a website for us not to be able to go through it and get proper responses. There are websites where we may have slightly lower success rate, which just means that it takes a bit longer for the responses. But at the moment, I'm not sure if there is any website that doesn't work with us. And when that happens, like we have a team that is dedicated to solve that. So in a matter of hours, we usually solve things like that. When not, I mean, the Zyte API system already automatically handles that most of the time, so that rarely happens. But yeah, I mean, it could sometimes happen.
Yeah, I've got a couple of little bits I can add on to the end of that. So the vast majority of sites fall well within. So 88% of sites are only tier 3 out of the 5 tiers of difficulty we have. There's only about 5% of websites even fall within the very hardest category. And our support there for every customer, for every Zyte API customer, is you'll get a response within an hour during the week and a first response within 8 hours. And that's within app and via email. So yeah, like Adrian says, we will get that solved quickly for you, but it doesn't happen particularly often. I'll quickly knock another anonymous question off. Can Zyte API scrape data on protected websites? Check out the Proxyway report. I'm sure somebody will put it in the chat for me if I ask nicely. They said yes. They tested us against a wide range. In fact, the top 5 or 6 anti-bot systems. And we went through them all. So that was great. Okay. In general, great idea from a user perspective. Thanks there. Volkan, I can definitely pronounce your name. Is there an example of the interaction action? I didn't see it on the reference page, so not sure how to use it.
Yeah, so this is actually what I was talking about the Zyte IDE. As Daniel pointed out, I misspoke. The IDE itself is actually available for everyone, but this specific feature, the ability to write a script and upload it to Zyte API and then use it, is not available for everyone. It's only available for enterprise customers because we have to trust you to let you upload code to our server. It's not something we can just open to just anyone. It would be a security issue. We have a few examples on the docs. I'll share a link, but yeah, that's the gist of it. Maybe we can go with the next question while I search for a link.
Yeah, so the question again by Andrzej. Thank you. So if I understood, at least the real person will try and resolve that block manually in the background capture. So yes, if Zyte API can't handle it automatically, which is rare, there is a team of humans behind the scenes who will manually go to that website, will update the API to recognize that website and its specific needs, and it will be added to the API, and then that will be unblocked for everybody who uses the Zyte API. And in fact, one of the good points to know is Zyte as a company, we have a services arm where customers come to us and say, hey, can you scrape data for us? And the system we use to do that is Zyte API and Scrapey. So the chances are most of the websites you want to scrape, we have already done them. They've already gone through the API. And so when we do fix a specific site, it goes out to everybody. So that's a nice little economy of scale we get there. So I hope that helps answer that one. Okay. And the last question we have is from Volkan. I'm running Selenium on AWS Lambda and always get blocked. Do you have any tips for it without using Zyte API? I used Zyte API, but it's always good to know more about how to do it.
Volkan here is basically asking for the secret of Coca-Cola, and to be honest, we are kind of open about it. We are not using. We have some proprietary technology, which we are of course not going to disclose. But the very base that we use is things that you can find out, like Puppeteer, Playwright, all of those existing tools. The thing is, you cannot just use those tools and get things to work. There is a lot of stuff you have to take care of, the stealth plugins and such, but also you sometimes have to tweak them for specific websites, and sometimes even the operating system has an impact. So it's really, there's a lot of variables. I strongly recommend you guys to visit extractsummit.io. That's the Extract Summit website where you can access the talks from this year. And there, Fabian from Scrapoxy talked It spent, I think, half an hour explaining all the things that a target server may take into account to decide whether or not to allow your request. And it's hard. Like there's so much data they can get from your request to determine whether or not you are someone they want to access that website. That
like velocity
really
tracking of a mouse movement down to that level, right?
It's crazy. That
you
is the
check out
reason why
Dragon,
we
yeah?
have Zyte API, so you don't have to worry about that because it's really you can get lost in that labyrinth.
Yeah. And this is what I talked about earlier about that acceleratingly diminishing returns on investment. It's like you can spend the next 5 weeks trying to figure that out and buying all the technology to do it, or you can just run it through Zyte API today. But of course, people like scraping. It's a hobby for some people even. So yeah, Fabian, who gave that talk, is on the Discord server, actually. So if you want to talk to Fabian, they probably one of the best known people for anti-bot anatomy. Jump on the Discord server, get Fabian from Scrap Proxy, and hit him up for some advice too. I'm sure he'll be happy to help. Okay.
About the questions about Ramesh are about being able to interact with websites. That's actually what we covered in the second part of my demo. But I mean, I'm not sure what exactly you are talking about. You can use already Zyte API to use browser rendering and to interact with the website, click buttons, follow processes. That's already possible. We also have server-side sessions which allow you to create an initial request that sets some parameters, maybe a zip code, something like that, and then have all follow-up requests reuse that session. Now, for interaction with websites, in some cases, when we are talking about long interactions that could take longer than a minute, that's more complicated. We are working on that. We are going to have client-side sessions when you can start a session and then send different requests through that session. And we are also working on having a socket connection, allowing you to access our browser from your own end, like you would access a Playwright browser or a Puppeteer browser. But those are things we have in the queue. I cannot promise now when we are going to release those features, but you can already interact with websites, and we are working on improving that experience even more.
And so I will add a little point to this. What we do have with Zyte API is a HTTP proxy mode. So Zyte is a REST API. If you did want to use Zyte API purely for the blocking and still use something like Puppeteer or Selenium, it can operate as a traditional proxy API, which you can just pop into Selenium and do your actions the way you know and love, and we'll still get all the blocking on power, and you can still use that tool that you like. Ramesh, is it for script? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we have an anonymous question that is very interesting. Sometimes we need to capture the JSON response for XHR requests to an API from a web page, which requires us to use browser-based solutions instead of something like simple requests. Do Scrapy and Zyte support capturing those data points? Usually, I mean, for most cases, I actually recommend to, depending on what you want performance-wise, it may be worth figuring out how those JSON requests are built in the website and trying to reproduce those. But you don't have to do that. If that will waste your developer time, we have you covered. Zyte API with browser, with browser rendering, you can use the evaluate action to actually run some JavaScript client, network client, to perform those API requests from the browser context and get that data. And we are also working, and this one I can say we are going to release very, very soon. We are working on what we call network capturing, which means that you can send a browser request and have configured Zyte API so that it monitors the network requests during that browser rendering session, and it's able to capture some of the responses, the API responses. So you send the request to the browser, and you set the parameters to capture that JSON response from the browser session, and you get that JSON response. This is not available right now, but I believe it will be available, if not before the end of the year, soon after.
Yeah, that's right. Anonymous does some serious scraping. I like it. Ramesh, Zyte, is Zyte only for scraping or can it interact with websites? Yes, obviously it can. We showed it's interacting with websites like that.
This is the one I answered earlier.
Oh, you answered perfectly. Yeah, brilliant. Sure, guys, arrange a webinar on that too. Thanks for your answer. Okay, thank you for the recommendation. I think that's all the questions, and we're probably running over a little now anyway. So I'd like to thank you all for spending your time coming here. I hope you learned something or even just had a nice time. We will put the next webinar up on all of the usual channels, whether it's social, Discord, email. Stay in touch with us, and we will see you for the next one. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Happy data hunting.
Thanks, everyone.